Hello, dear subscribers. Today I'm going to tell you about a vision that will a little clarify for all of us the structure of the worlds and the process of reincarnation. I'm going to explain exclusively from the position of elevated universe, the spiritual spheres of the worlds. There's a huge number, an infinite number of them. To correspond to each of these worlds, we must own certain qualities. If we possess a certain set of qualities, then we are, in principle, worthy of being incarnate in one of the spiritual spheres, in the worlds of the righteous, for example, in the so-called holy heavens or the worlds of holiness, of righteousness. In the tradition of Christianity, this term corresponds more with the heavenly worlds. In the tradition of Hinduism, there is a very large number of lokas with different levels of implementation. Each of the deities is associated with its own multi-level system. The deities are connected with not just one world, but with several dozen worlds at once. Roughly speaking, there are worlds in which the righteous are incarnated, the worlds in which great saints are incarnated, and above higher and higher. This is like a pyramid or something like that. Let's get started right away. Reciting the mantra, I found myself outside the physical body and, as I then understood, I saw the huge form of Krishna. It was some kind of universal form that, when I saw it, I immediately recognized it. At some point, I realized that this is Krishna, because I saw the same light from him that I saw during meditation in Vrindavan, when visiting it. That was a bright, blue saturated light, and so on. That was the universal form. I understood that this was Krishna, but I was a little behind and to the side. And at the level of the shoulder girdle, at the level of the shoulders, I saw a huge sphere. It was a certain spiritual world that corresponded, relatively speaking, to the holy heavens, those worlds in which Brahma rules, Brahmaloka. This is what this world is called in the sacred scriptures, Brahmaloka, worlds of Brahma. And I not only saw this world, I saw Brahma inside, I saw the way he controls this world. The world was huge, but in comparison with the worlds that were even higher, with the worlds of Sri Narayana, for example, it was, generally, very small. And even an element of some kind of primitivism was present. It looked like a kindergarten, completely underdeveloped, or something like this. But, although, if you look at this world, I'm trying to explain from the position of our material world, then these are, of course, heavenly spheres. These are very sublime spiritual worlds, divine worlds. So, naturally, these worlds look from here just super divine, super pretentious, and so on. But if you are at the level of worlds of Sri Narayana, then these worlds look rather meager. Moreover, this world is created from the energy of the mind, to a greater extent. There is a lot of white light. I have repeatedly emphasized and described it after being in meditation. White light is inherent exclusively to the Brahma, to the worlds called Brahmaloka. So if you see a white light, this is specific just to the worlds of Brahma. Lord Shiva is connected with a different color scheme. Bright blue shining light is specific to the worlds of Sri Narayana, but you cannot compare the white light of Brahmaloka and the bright blue shining light of the worlds of Narayana. These are completely different levels. It is impossible to compare them at all because the light carries a certain level of realization. The light of Brahmaloka is very simple by the level of evolution. Well, let me go back further to describe. What can all this be compared with? If we compare it with the Earth, then our planet was not visible at all. It looked so primitive and small that it was somewhere below the level of the feet of the divine form of Krishna. It wasn't visible at all. And relative to our material world, the larger world was the level of Brahmaloka. It is a very voluminous world, a huge sphere. And being at the level of this sphere, I seemed to observe that Brahma himself was in the center. But I saw Brahma not only in its physical form. I saw, by and large, his spiritual body, which is located in the Anahata chakra, in the heart chakra. This sphere also consisted of pure white light, and he seemed to be in the center of this world. he looked like to protect this world with his own shining. Everything consisted of his radiance, his energy from his realization, so to speak. And now the most important thing, why I saw exactly this divine form of Krishna and the worlds of Brahmaloka. Watching all this, I had a thought, why am I seeing all this? What should I realize? And at some point I see how Lord Krishna turns his head and looks at Brahmaloka, in the center of this world. And here it began to dawn on me that in fact Brahma, apparently, was guilty of something. Something went wrong, he's doing something incorrect. And I heard one single phrase. I didn't hear it with my ears, but I heard it inside myself, like some kind of mystical voice that sounded inside me and Brahma. This phrase sounded like, "You can't cope." It was said in such a neutral voice. No emotions of dissatisfaction, no emotions of joy, no some kind of sublime state. Just like an ordinary state, relatively speaking, or I can even say, working state. So, this universal form of Krishna speaks to Brahma, "You can't cope." In the next moment I understood that Lord Krishna is pushing him out of this world. I saw the universal form of Brahma and, at some point, his soul came out through the left side from Brahma himself, flew beyond Brahmaloka and rushed down. When it flew out of Brahma, I saw that it was in a dirty state. Inside that soul were very dirty brown, even darker shades that are inherent even, I would say, to some unclean spirits, unclean demonic beings. Did you understand? Yes. There is a huge universal sphere, with Brahma in the center. He is in such a beautiful yoga pose, he is meditating, looks like a gray-haired old man, he is very handsome, around there are rainbows, the radiance, and so on. And from his body, through the left side, his own soul comes out of his place. It flies out of this world, and as soon as the edge of the world ends, it immediately goes down. And I watched this whole process and I saw that the soul is in a truly sinful state. I realized that it flew out of shape of Brahma, because this was exactly the will of Krishna. And that was not all. When I watched this whole process, I saw that in fact the worlds of Brahmaloka are a kind of stencil that was created by force of will of Sri Narayana. The souls that correspond to this world naturally incarnate there to carry out some of their missions, to fulfill some of their activities. This world is similar to a matrix, I can even say this is really the matrix. The form of Brahma is always present there. A certain soul inhabits this form, well, or incarnates. I'm describing roughly. There exists the process of the birth of Brahma as it is described in the sacred scriptures. Then the time comes when some bad signs begin to appear and he leaves this world. The next soul comes and again Brahma is born. Naturally, he exists for a very long time, and so on. But in any case, there are exceptions. Apparently, this story is just a form of exception. Because in any case, everything is subordinated exclusively to Narayana. What I wanted to convey, I did not finish yet. That world is really the matrix, just like our world itself is a certain kind of matrix, but not in the form in which it is in the film Matrix described. Everything is not so much in a slave state. There is a certain free will, there is the law of karma, there are consequences, there are reasons. In general, everything is as described in the Vedic tradition. And Brahmaloka also consists of this matrix system. It is very important to understand that this matrix system is based on the law of karma. This is essential. The law of karma works even there. It's significant how Krishna, relatively speaking, pushed this soul out of the form of Brahma, and this soul fell into the lower worlds. And where Brahma should be, there remained just his spiritual shell, consisting of white light. This just indicates that the system itself is a certain kind of structure. It has constructional properties. But higher up there, the worlds are created in a completely different way. There are other signs. During the destruction of the universe, when a kalpa passes, and the universe begins to collapse, all souls go into a state of sleep. There is a day of Brahma, then there is a night of Brahma. During the day, he is awake, during the night Brahma sleeps. Respectively, such cycle is called kalpa, and the time of rest comes afterwards. The most interesting thing is that worlds of Narayana are not under the influence of the law of karma. They are not falling asleep at this time. Brahma's dream does not affect them, those worlds are in eternal bliss. That is described in the scriptures, and Prabhupada also said about it. The time is not limited there, and transcendental games take place exactly there, in the worlds of Narayana, or in the worlds of Krishna, whatever you want. Why am I mentioning the form of Narayana? It's just because I have visions with him to a greater extent. With Krishna, a little less. Narayana, this is the universal form, Krishna is the manifested form of Narayana on earth. Sometimes guys send me all sorts of quotes from the sacred scriptures, where said that Narayana is higher, others send them saying that Krishna is the highest. In fact, it is impossible to separate them. This is the same being, just Krishna, this is the manifested form of Narayana on earth, do you understand? In the same way as Narasimha, this is also his angry form manifested on earth. Rama, this is the manifested form of devotion to the Dharma, a spiritual leader, another avatar on earth. Vairagya is a savior from the hellish worlds, a rescuer who was created exclusively from ignorant energies. Such an expansion of tamas guna. Vairagya is meant. But this is the same being. We cannot say that Krishna is higher or Narayana is higher. Who are we to speak out regarding who is superior? In order to say which of them is higher, which of them is lower, we must be in a state of realization. But who is in a state of such realization so that we can compare one expansion with another expansion? There are no such people on earth on principle. Even the great sages rishis could not recognize him. They were constantly stumbling over Krishna's games. He was constantly admonishing them. He was putting a spoke in their wheel, telling them, guys, you aren't enough realized in order to generally draw any conclusions. Narada is an example of this. He is considered the highest perfect soul in its realization, but he is probably no less mistaken than all of us put together. He also commits some of his own misunderstandings. But these are spiritual games. When Krishna pushed out the soul from the shell of Brahma himself, I heard the following phrase that he said, I will perform myself the duties of Brahma. This phrase struck me, because it was amazing. Naturally, some of my fantasies turned on. I thought, if this is a divine form that will perform duties instead of Brahma, will he be there inside or something? This thought a little confused me. In the next moment, I saw that Krishna does not have to be inside of Brahma. He can perform from his divine form the functions that Brahma should perform, regardless of whether the soul that should perform is in this divine body of Brahma himself. He may be in the worlds of Narayana and perform the functions of Brahma. No one will notice this, no one will be able to distinguish this. And it was said as if in fact it would be easier, simpler, more reliable, calmer. When the soul was inside the body of Brahma, this dirt was not visible. I also traced this element, it was even surprising for me. When you look at Brahma, he is absolutely pure and perfect. He sits in the white light, such a deity, don't find fault with. But Krishna sees our hearts. After he looked at Brahma and said, you can't cope, he threw him down. And when this soul had already fallen out through the left side, I saw that in fact this is a soul that has accumulated a huge amount of sinful activity, and he actually doesn't look super good in reality. Yes, this is the so-called spiritual death, if I may say so, the death of the deities. As I understand, this is what may happen in the spiritual worlds. There was also a very interesting element. When I observed all these transcendental games, I wanted all the time to turn around and see the face of this divine expansion of Krishna. It's because I was at a distance, I saw a little to the side, a little behind, and his face constantly eluded me. And being also interested in the manifested form of Krishna on earth, I wanted to see his face so that maybe, somehow, I could determine where this person is and what he will look like. At a certain moment I tried to look closer, I wanted to see his face. When I managed to shift a little the plane, to change the viewing angle relative to the divine appearance of the universal form of Krishna, I saw his face. But I saw the face in the guise of Jagannath, these beautiful eyes and beautiful, fine smile. I looked and understood that this was Jagannath. That's the way Krishna answered me. You want to see my face, but my face is Jagannath. What do you need else? You see me every day, I am standing on the altar, and you still don't know my guise. Generally, something like this. In fact, this was the answer regarding the Kalki avatar. There are sacred scriptures that mention that the Lord will come as a form of Jagannath. I read recently in the Bhavishya Purana that the Lord will come to 10,000 years on earth in order to manifest the golden age. This is an amazing story. And now, perhaps, we still need to summarize a little and explain what this vision itself means. Everything that is connected with Brahma carries a certain imprint on the planet. These are spiritual traditions of the Brahmins, their qualities, the class of Brahmins, and all this is somehow connected with Brahma himself. There are spiritual traditions that are associated with him. They are also very clearly manifested on the planet. And when this shift occurred, most likely everything that is connected with Brahma, first of all spiritual traditions, religious tradition, will apparently change. It will, probably, transform in the direction of purification. When this not entirely blissful soul was in the Brahma itself, naturally there was a certain decline. Nowadays, if look on the planet, it is clear that spiritual traditions are degrading. I am not scolding, I am not trying to offend in any way. But in fact the element of degradation is present. The level of materialism, the level of a certain irresponsible attitude is too high in society, terribly high. The amount of those who do spiritual practices is at the level of 1 to 2%, everyone else just somehow imitates it. But this is not our topic. You know, there is a saying, a fish rots from the head. Here is exactly the same case. There is also mentioned in the scriptures, I'm quoting verbatim, that the Kali Yuga will begin with the fact that God Brahma will allow to fall his own sins on his own back. This is an indicator that the level of his soul, the low level of his realization no longer allows him to continue accumulating sins, to carry out his own sinful activities, and this will entail certain reactions. He can no longer cope. Accordingly, Kali Yuga comes. Brahma can no longer cope with the sins that he created himself. There are quite a lot of examples regarding Brahma. The scriptures describe how many demigods really do weird things out there that sometimes are not childish. Naturally, we don't scold anyone. We must draw conclusions and understand that the worlds of demigods carry certain qualities and the problems of their own. They provide a huge amount of pleasures, spiritual ones as well, but at the same time they have their own difficulties and obstacles. Here's one of the stories. Maybe someone remembers this one related to Brahma, when was born little Sarasvati, the goddess who would later become the wife of Brahma, the goddess of speech. And she was a small child. Well, the scriptures say she was 3 to 4 years old. She was so beautiful and perfect that Brahma desired her. She was still a child, and she looked like a child. She was an unformed woman, an unformed goddess in a state of development. This is emphasized in the sacred scriptures. I'm not adding anything here. Brahma desired her. He looked at her, at a child, and he developed a passion. He wanted to enter into an intimate relationship. I call things by their proper names. At some point he heard a voice inside himself. Sarasvati shamed, disgraced him, saying, "Well, you are such a perfect divine personality. Here I am a child. I see your thoughts, you lust after me. Thousands of saints and demigods pray to you, but you are behaving like a vile human being." There is quite a lot of such stories, particularly with Brahma. There are also narrations related to how Brahma blessed many demons, in the same way as Shiva did. Both of them used to bless demonic personalities. Yes, that's about Shiva and Brahma. This is also an indicator of certain of their own qualities. Here's one of my improvisations, a thinking. Don't you see these are demons? Why do you bless? I actually thought about this. Really, the story itself sounds simply paradoxical. What's the point in this Vedic tradition in general if the gods who appear to us as the highest, the most perfect, the super beautiful, as the same Shiva and Brahma, act so strange that we just wonder? Well, naturally, as if they commit such actions, then it's not surprising that they are replaced, removed, and pushed out by the divine personality. Well, these are some of my additions. This vision was about 5 days ago. I think this is a turning point in the existence of the planet. Everything that is Brahminical will go by the wayside. There will be certain very strong transformations. I think the world that exists in the situation in which we are, accustomed to those values that are values for us, will change. The values will remain values, but the structure itself will become different. If the world is now unipolar, it will, for example, become multipolar. This is my opinion. We should be ready that there will be very strong changes. I want to say that for Russia there's no need to be afraid of changes. We should really strive to transform, to understand that Russia is in a cornered situation. Despite this, Russia is a great country. It really is. We have to believe in ourselves. We have to be bolder. We have to be more active, not more aggressive, but specifically more active. We have to understand that the center of the world is not Europe or the United States, but namely Russia. It is by virtue of the greatness of the human spirit of the Russian people, by virtue of all forgiveness which exists exclusively in the Russian people, by virtue of the power of patience, which we have been developing for thousands of years. These people are very patient. We need to be prepared for the fact that Russia will lead in the future the whole planet. There's no need to worry, there's no need to be afraid. Well, something like this. Jai Jagannath, see you soon.